Okay, so let's get going with today's episode and welcome Randy Heinzen. Randy is a leading global vineyard management expert and has been working with some of the most sought after vineyards in the world. I'm just going to say it that way. He is the owner and president of Vineyard Professional Services, VPS, not to be confused with VSP, the vertical shoot positioning system. That is located in Paso Robles, California. VPS currently manages over 4,000 acres across 3 counties along California's Central Coast. I love that place. Hey, Randy, how's it going?
Good morning, my friend.
Good to see you here. And it's been a little while since we've chatted and hung out. Before we start about vine planting and site prep, can you tell our listeners a little more about yourselves and about your company? Let's just say Vineyard Professional Services and what you do. And before you do that, I just want to say we probably met in 2013 when I came to the Central Coast. And, I started talking to you, and we have a lot of things in common in our background just in terms of, education and going overseas to get experience. So if you want to go back that far and talk a little bit about yourself, that's great. But we definitely want to know what's going on the Central Coast with Vineyard Professional Services.
Yeah, thanks, Fritz. I think it was an Italian dinner, if I remember right, with
Sounds
a
about
nurseryman, a Napa grower, a Paso grower, and a vineyard team member. Sounds
Yeah,
like a good
sounds
start
sounds
to a
like the
joke.
beginning of a bad joke, the
Mm.
vineyard manager, viticulturist, and nurseryman walk into an Italian restaurant, right?
And I think you ordered all in Italian, which just blew my mind. So that is good
Showing off.
times. Yeah, yeah. Thanks. Yeah, so we're Vineyard Professional Services. We are a vineyard management company. So for those who don't know, it's almost like property management. We do everything from source properties, plan them out, plant them, develop, farm all the way through to harvest. We do not make wine, but we are sort of soup to nuts. Anything you need done on your property, we can find a way to do it and execute and bring all the labor and equipment and materials to bear. My wife has a separate company called Vineyard Professional Real Estate, and she is on both the front end and, let's say, the back end. Some people say the two best days in owning a vineyard: the day you buy it, the day you sell it. So she's at the two best days, and I fill in the middle.
So, Randy, site prep is what I kind of want to start with here. This starts about 12 months to 24 months before the vines are even planted. What's the typical timeline you work with before you develop a site? I know ideally more time is better, but what do you end up working with in reality from the time you set foot on a site until the time you plant it when you're called in?
Yeah, the when we get on an engagement for a property, there's a little bit of a this is the vineyard potential for this site and give kind of gross. We think these acres could be planted. We think this mix of varieties might do well here. But really, the ball starts rolling when you choose your nursery stock. We're trying to get that in place 18 months in advance because our best success comes from vines that are at least a year old. So for instance, it's March right now, end of March. Nursery windows are still open where you can graft. We are currently planning projects for planting next April and are busily trying to get planting contracts in place so that the nurseries will graft them here in the coming weeks. They will then grow them an entire year at their site and then deliver us 1-year-old plants next April for planting. We definitely have done projects where you're asking a nursery to make a plant now and then plant it 3 months from now after it's healed. But from a success standpoint, if you can buy a 1-year-old plant, especially it's the same cost, why wouldn't you have a nursery carry over that plant and kind of make sure that it is healed and is ready to be, and it's a little more mature as it goes into the ground. So
Yeah.
for us, ball starts rolling once the nursery order gets placed, and from there, now you start to really fine tune your design. You start to, outline blocks, do your soil sampling, start looking at what's possible from a water situation if it's going to be irrigated. Try and figure out, okay, here's the timing of each operation. Make a little Gantt chart and just start, making colors as you go along, saying on track, not on track, not on track.
Yeah,
We have one
that
project
happens
right
too.
now. Yeah, yeah. I think we probably have some client. We have definitely have clients that listen to this, and we have one project right now that is in the not on track category, and we're
You know
trying
who
to
you
get
are out there. Get on
you know
track.
who.
That's right.
So, but yeah, it's a
And
fascinating process. It's very iterative because one of the big challenges is you make your nursery order now, and then once you actually start getting into the soil work and trellising, you start to realize, oh, I'm a 3% or 5% over or under on these blocks as you start to fine tune it. And now you have to go back and adjust nursery orders, have them resell those plants, move blocks around a bit in terms of what plants go where, so that it becomes there's a lot of back and forth between now and when the day you plant.
I'm guessing you have a protocol in place for whenever the vines arrive from the nursery. How do you decide when the planting day is? Are you worried about late fall freezes or late spring freezes rather? Um, do you have to, you're planting large vineyards. Do you need to have cold storage in place to store these vines if they're going to take, a week or two to plant for a larger project? If so, how do you manage that? And then we'll go into kind of the care of the vines and what we do after we're actually putting them in the ground and planting them.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll tackle this a little bit from an efficiency standpoint. One, we're the timing of planting is very much as soon as we get all of our other stuff done that we're supposed to have done before planting, and sometimes it's like, you guys keep working in that block. We're going to plant this block because it's finally ready, and then we'll move over there later. So there's absolutely a kind of rush to get it done, and then as soon as it's ready, go. Frost is a concern, it depends on the type of plant you're planting. I'm assuming we'll get into like dormant versus green growing.
Yeah.
Um, if it's dormant, then we're pretty comfortable earlier in spring. If it's green growing, then yeah, maybe you're a little worried about frost, and that it's all site dependent there. Ideally, you're in the ground. Um, Ideally, you're in the ground while you still have resident moisture from the overwintering rains, because not all water is the same, right? If you have moisture that is from rains, it is the entirety of the footprint of that parcel or that vineyard block. If you're just relying on drip irrigation, you have two drips, or a lot of times when we're installing young vines, it's a single dripper, and so you have just one little source of water for these brand new roots. So the earlier you can do it without being at risk of frost, the much better establishment you have. That's a easy fact to state.
Okay.
Um, the
Got
the
it.
other the other little trick, or the tool that we have to use, is we end up having to front load a lot of the plants at the vineyard in the staging area, because um, once you've engaged labor to start planting, depends on the crew, real gross numbers, but we're 3 to 6,000 vines a day per crew, and we're planting. Um, that if you're getting truckloads of green growers, those trucks, these are semis that only can take about 7,000 vines, tall vines, to a site at a time. So if you don't have a good network of vines coming in, vines going out to the field, like the worst thing is to have people standing around. So we
Right.
end up front loading a lot of our vines into a loading zone. We then establish almost like our own site nursery, where we have big hoses that we're watering these vines for days or weeks as we wait for
These are
block.
potted vines you're talking
These are
about.
potted. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Are you primarily planting with machine, by hand, or do you use both? And I'd like to do a little chat on the pros and cons of both.
We are wholly planting by hand. We
Okay. And
have
these
a
are large vineyards you're planting by hand. So why is it that you choose hand planting?
the fast and easy answer is, we're very much in favor of having trellis and water in place, staked and ready for that plant, from a not only the water's being delivered at the right spot, not lying on the ground, but also the stake is there for support and for growth. We have some windy sites, we have some, rabbits or other pests. Um, Especially with tall vines, the tall vines need that stake. They come with a bamboo if you want it, but like with taller format vines, we really like to have steel in the field, wired up and sturdy. Um, the planting machines I'm familiar with, a lot of them require just having a bare field and coming through and punching them in.
Right.
Um, so that's our first and foremost. Secondly, we have an incredibly talented labor force that can plant, for days on end, that understand how best to care for these things when they're putting them in, and do it at a speed and efficiency and quality that I I don't yet have a cost reason to go with mechanical planting. Um, and I physically can't because of our trellis in place. I've seen a couple folks use mechanical planting machines, actually in the Napa Sonoma area. Um, they bought two of them, and then within 2 years, both of them were for sale. So I think there's been some folks that have been trying it here in the Central Coast of California and the North Coast. But by and large, I think most of our planting is done by hand.